All right, there are moments in history when truth becomes very fragile, when what we see and hear can no longer be trusted, when lies wear faces of leaders and disinformation flies faster than facts. Over 31 years since June 12th, and then the stakes have changed. But the questions remain, can democracy survive another assault? Will 2027 be the year when Nigerians vote or get voted for by algorithms and altered realities? These are the questions we're going to be dwelling upon today. So on that note, let me welcome you to the beam, where curiosity stirs conversations, taking us a step further into the future we desire. Here, we speak facts, challenge power, and ensure that the voices that need to be raised up are pushed up so that people can hear what the truth really looks like. On this note, I say I am Sunas Nathaniel, and today we are discussing democracy, clone war, deep fakes, disinformation, and the ghost of June 12. With me are two highly brilliant individuals. We have first Chiamaka Okafor, Executive Director of the Lead Foundation, a civic tech advocate and media literacy educator. And next to her is Dr. Ndubisin Wokolo, Security Strategist and Chief Executive of Next Year SPD. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Consider.
All right, let's get straight to it. I'm going to begin with Chiamaka. In a sentence or two, just tell us, how would you describe Nigeria's current state of information, the ecosystem right now? How would you describe it, in leading to 2027?
Well, currently what we have, thank you for inviting me, Sunas. So what we have, straight into your question, is what we refer to in communication jargon as a current state of information overload. And that simply means there's just too much information everywhere. So you struggle to decide where and when you want to be. And even when you try not to find information finds you, especially in the age of social media and digitalization and all of the things we have. And that's no different from Nigeria. Everywhere else in the world is the same thing. Perhaps why Nigeria is peculiar is because of our demography and our literacy level. So you have to contend with a lot of pre-existing challenges side by side what we have now. There are good and bad sides to this, but I guess that's why we're having this conversation on how we can interact with all of this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Doctor, let's come to you. We often talk about, voter intimidation, ballot boxes, stuffing. But now we're facing a different challenge with the algorithms, AI-generated fake candidates, clone voices, and all those things. And then the question will be, what are the real threats right now when it comes to the build-up? And it's funny that we're discussing 2027 right now, because somehow people are saying that's an election that really decides a lot for this nation. So what threats are we really facing right now?
I mean, in terms of what we see or looking at information, disinformation, the Nigerian society, what we're seeing is not different from what is happening in other countries, right? So if we go back to the West, especially the last election in the United States, we also what happened. But the question remains, what is the state doing about it? I mean, that's the most critical thing. So if you're looking at the threats will always be there because the world is a global village. So like what Chiamaka said, even if you don't find the news will find you. So some of the things you're going to see or you're likely to see, both the disinformation, the misinformation, and the malinformation. There's so many of them, right? So as we march towards 2027, the major question remains, what is it that Nigerians are interested about, right? So most times you move towards what you're interested about. And then the political class, I mean, these are the main issue around here. What is it that they want to make you believe? So what they want to make you believe will now be factored into how they start designing those kind of either disinformation, either misinformation, either malinformation, right? So the threats will now come from the things around us, from insecurity to economy, to politics, to religion, and so on and so forth. I mean, each of these things will play a role towards 2027. How do you handle them? How do you tell the story? How do you misinform people? How do you disinform people? They will always form a room to those things we are looking at. the question now comes back again, like I always say. For me, the state remains the key here, not the government. So what are those institutions of the state that are supposed to be a bit neutral? What is it they will be doing towards 2027? I'll give you an instance. 2 months ago, we had INEC came out to say the election has not started. People should not be putting billboards. Soonest, have you not been seeing billboards?
Enough of them, yes.
What did INEC do about it? Who did INEC challenge? Right? So INEC as an institution is supposed to be neutral. At least not part of the government. So where you're not even sure whether they are part of the ruling government, not this particular government, but in every subsequent government, the question remains, how do you now start looking at the neutrality of the state? If I do not see the state as neutral, I am now allowed to question everything, to even start taking hook, line, and sinker, those false stories, whether they are true or not. I mean, these are the threats.
Wow. Chavaga, that's a lot to take in right now. And then you're working with a lot of young people, and the question will be for me, the Gen Zs and millennials who dominate this space. How do we get them to spot what is fake, what is real, what is true, what needs to be reshared, reposted? How do we get them to do this, in the real standard terms, so that we don't escalate certain things and take them to a height where this nation might go into implosion?
At the root of everything is education, really. And when we say education, we don't necessarily mean formal education. While formal education is important, we have a huge number of out-of-school children or out-of-school people or people who are not within the formal setting. And so you think about non-formal settings and how you can get to people there. Interesting thing is that the bulk of the people who are being used as tools during political seasons or electoral periods are people who are in non-formal setting. I mean, between you and I, it would take a lot to convince us to, get into the kinds of things we see other people doing because of the privileges we have. So I go back to saying education is very important, and that is what we are doing at Millet Foundation. The kind of education we're giving or the kind of things we're educating people on are not the regular things people want to listen to. People are interested in entertainment. People are interested in, quick moving things, the very juicy ones. And so getting people to become media and information literates is not an easy task, and it's not a regular thing. And one thing we have noticed while working in the last 1 year plus is that media and information literacy is not prioritized in this part of the world. And I say this to point out to Canada, Finland, and a lot of EU countries who have embedded media and information literacy even into their formal education setting because of how important it is for people to understand media narratives, media messages, media messaging, the rationale behind the kinds of things you receive or the kind of things you see, the ability to question, why am I seeing this one? And just like Dr. Ndubisi said, the minds of people and what people are talking about determines the kind of strategy the state or the government or the political elites deploy to get them on whatever side they want to. And the argument becomes, if people are educated, if they are media and information literate enough, they can spot these things themselves. And we are working more with young people for very peculiar reasons or for very obvious reasons. Oftentimes, the bulk of this work is left for journalists, researchers, that a certain group of people to take on. And we're a country of over 200 million people. How many journalists are in the country? And when you ask that question, you juxtapose it with the number of people in the country. How many researchers do we have in this country that are focused on disinformation analysis or even information disorder? How many fact-checking organizations do we have in the country? And then you go into the several questions of funding, capacity, resources, and all of those things. And so low-hanging fruit is to go to where people are. Youth organizations, influencers, non-formal setting, communities, get people to engage and say, these are the basic things. The reason you see this information you see is X, Y, Z, and this is how to make sure you are safe. So the basic thing is when you see something and you are not sure of it, try to ask questions around, which is one of the basic things we teach in our several modules to say, why am I seeing this? And so when you can take a pause and ask yourself, why am I seeing this? Then the other questions start to come forward. And then UNESCO will say, think before you share. And you have things like share responsibly, critical thinking. And critical thinking it looks very, elite. It looks very rosy. What is critical thinking? What does it mean to be critical? But the basic asking why is critical. Where is this coming from? Who is pushing this? Why is this coming to me at this time? Why am I just saying this? And there are specific messages and messaging you see during political season that you don't see throughout the year, but when it gets to that point, it kicks off. And just to deviate a little bit, Dr. Ndubisi made mention of INEC and the billboards, and INEC saying it's not election season. I always like to disagree. I don't think election period ever closes. It's a continuum. We just keep
Even
going.
when somebody wins.
Exactly. We keep going because even when a winner is announced, someone is already planning for the next season and doing, on the ground work in quote, like we call it. And we're seeing that happen already. The minds of people from 2023 are consistently being molded, remolded. People are trying to hold the minds of the ones they have. And we see this conversation happening on social media spaces, especially X and Facebook. It's murky waters over there, especially on X. You spend time seeing that what we call social cohesion, the very essence of the fabric of this nation, its people or her people are divided across several ridiculous lines. And you see the argument every day. So coming back to your question, education is very important.
All right. Thank you very much. Doctor, let's come back to you in say 3 minutes. Just give us this rundown of who really is driving and who really will be driving the narratives in the build-up to this time. And then the question is, one of those things that this whole information chaos has really stirred is there's a greater distance in between the people and the government. And then the question is, how do we bridge this? Because the government has to be of the people. It has to be by the people, right? So how do we bridge this, that the information is true and it's solid, and each party, both the government and the people, can understand that, hey, this is where we are as a people. This is what we're channeling, basically.
I mean, since you've asked a very critical question, right? And I like the argument by Chiamaka when she talked about critical thinking. In some countries, philosophy is something they even make students to pick even from primary school. Because critical thinking helps you to ask those why, who, those questions, right? Now, if you look at the question you've asked, it takes me back to the major argument, which is government, right? Most times, because of the way we've been able to run politics in this country, we think that government is the same as the state, right? They are not the same. So when you say government is like a caretaker of a state. So what government does is like it runs the affairs of the state for a certain year. And we want to stay in power the next agreed time coming. Say 4 years, he wants to win power the next 4 years. So like when Chiamaka talked about, election starts.
It never stops.
It never stops. I won't agree with her. But why most times you have those rules is not to hand over undue power, influence, and advantage to people in power, forgetting their opposition who wants to take over from them, right? So for instance, if President Tinubu now starts campaigning now, he's going to be he'll be using state resources against the opposition. So that's why most times those check and balances need to be there, not to hand over undue advantage, right? So when you say who will be driving these narratives, the political class definitely will be the ones driving it. But it's equally good for us to know that disinformation, misinformation, malinformation are not done by, that's what we use here in Nigeria, Dundee. I mean, they are done by very smart people because they are cashing in on your thinking to be able to craft those things. Because it must be something you have to buy hook, line, and sinker. So for them to drive it, they need to get very sharp, intelligent people to do it. Incidentally, the ones doing it, sharing it, may not be the ones who will go out there to commit those violence, right? Electoral violence and related issue. It goes back to those of them who may not be as lettered as you have. But those who must have bought it and go out there to destroy an existing...
Doctor, we're going to go for a break. All right, welcome back. You're still watching The Beam, and I still have Dr. Nwokolo and Chiamaka here with me. Let's get to the next session of questions. Let me start with Doctor because we stopped when he was speaking. How likely is it that AI-generated deepfakes could be used, to incite violence and manipulate, voter sentiment in Nigeria ahead of 2027? How likely are we to see this really happen?
I don't want to be a prophet, but I would be lying if I don't say I won't predict that it will happen. Not just because it's a Nigerian thing, but it has come to become a political means of trying to either deceive, convince, or I don't know what other word to use, but it's a global thing, right? So check election everywhere in the world. And like I said, they try to look at the existing issues within a country and try to cash in on them. I'll give you an instance where the last election, you will take a picture of, say, someone from a particular zone in the country or geopolitical zone and replace his voice with a different voice, right? Either looking at issues within that geopolitical zone and say that either he had said this or had said that. I mean, it's always like that. And then looking at the situation where we are in, we have terrorism in the northeast, we have banditry in the northwest, we have farmer-herder conflict in the north central, we have kidnapping all across the country, you have a secession agitation in the southeast, piracy and so on in the south-south. Gangs and gang groups in the southwest. So imagine that I'm contesting against any of these people, and I now say, okay, because he hasn't said this, I will say that he's in support of that. All we need to do is to get something that looks like his voice or our voice and mimic it and put his picture. It takes somebody who understands that this might not really be true to be able to say, wait a minute, I don't think this guy or this woman will say this. Can we do further investigation to be sure? It's going to happen. And most times, politicians are the ones who give credence to this, right? So like your question, you're saying, who are those who are going to perpetuate this or be in the forefront of this happening? It's going to come from our political class. They will use our foot soldiers. They will use the young people who understand most of these AI algorithms and so on, to use them to design all these things. And then before you know it, it's on WhatsApp, it's on Facebook, it's all everywhere. And the person is now finding difficult to defend his or herself that she never said that. So what they will cash in on are the issues around, the governance issues in the country, from insecurity, like I said, to religion issues. But definitely will it happen? Surely it will happen. But the question remains, how are we as a people, as part of our state building and nation building, to start working against this, knowing that it will happen? So I'm happy with the work Chiamaka is doing, in her NGO, But what support are they getting? Are we going to keep waiting for foreign donors to help us do our own work? Right? So most times for those in power, right, and those who are not in power, it doesn't mean much to them, right? All they want is to win election. So how they win election, free or fair, is a different kettle of fish. But as a people, do you win an election and you find it difficult to cover? So most times for me, it's not about winning the war, it's about winning the peace. So how do we start building a country where after an election, people are like, we shake hands and say, I lost because you were the better candidate.
All right.
Right? Not because I lost either because there's a technical glitch or because somebody came out and deceived voters against me. So these are some of the things that we need to look at as we march towards 2027.
All right. There's a way you put it that makes me wonder if we are close to what we're supposed to be doing, because it's not so far away. And that brings me to you. What should civil societies and other influencers, what should the civil society be doing right now to make sure that we don't have that, that information explosion that can put us into trouble? And how do we also fix the information disorder in Nigeria? I think it's something that bothers around the work you do.
So I'll start from the bottom. I don't know if we can fix the information disorder, but I know that we can do something about it. And that it brings me to your first question: what can civil society organizations do? And the first thing will be to embrace the spirit of collaboration. We work in isolation too much that we lose sight of what we can achieve as a group. And I haven't been able to lay my hands on why civil societies would rather work in silos than work as a team, but we know too well what working as a team could do for us as a people. And you go back to the very recent example I like to use would be the NSAS protest, for example, where we saw people come together and demanded accountability on police brutality. And this is not to say that that accountability hadn't been demanded over time. But what gave it that amount of clout and credence it received at the time was because everyone came together, regardless of wherever you were from, north, south, east, west, whatever part of the country. Everyone was speaking towards the same thing. And then going back to civil society organization, you find that a lot of us are doing the same thing, but it's either one person is scared that the bigger guy might just suppress me and push me out of the game, or, you know, I don't want to share my glory with any other person. I just want to be the sole proprietor of this narrative, and I'll be the only one that will be called in the room. But what we seem to forget every time is that the space is very big for all of us, and we're not even enough to address the challenges that keep emerging every day. And these are emerging challenges. They won't come to an end. This morning, you've come up with a solution for yesterday's problem. By afternoon, there's a new problem that you need to create a solution for. So we need to consistently work together as a team, create a community of, what's it called now? A community of practice, right? Collaboration, 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 and which is what, for me, is at the heart of what we do. So we're currently organizing a media and information literacy workshop for youth-led organizations in the Southwest. And the idea is to bring people from different states of the Southwest into the room to have that conversation, and at the end have them go back to their communities to do step-down training, because we cannot go to every community in the country and we can't catch everybody in the country. But what we do is to do our own bit, to write organizations who we think share the same ideas or might be interested in what we're doing, write ministries of youth, information, education, for example. And we've gotten good support from UNESCO over time. This is the third edition we're doing. We've had one in the northwest, in the southeast, now in the southwest. And like Dr. Mokoli said, how long do we have to rely, or do we want to rely on external donors to do our job for us? And I like to say it's a colonialist or colonized people mindset. We're waiting for someone to feed us. Yeah, we keep waiting for that. And this is not... it is not an obligation. They do not owe us that responsibility. However, they are extending, you know, goodwill and all of that to us. And then you ask questions, what is the government doing? And this should naturally be the Ministry of Information or the National Orientation Agency's work, for example, to make sure that things like this do not happen, or even if they are happening, people are constantly getting educated. But, yeah. The realities are different, but we keep working together. So going back to your question, I think collaboration is at the top of what civil society organizations need to do. And second, perhaps, would be to continuously improve and build on our capacity on the work we do, because we're dealing with emerging technologies. They keep changing every day. So that's what I think we need to do.
All right. Finally, Doctor, in just 1 minute, let's talk policy. You know, do you think there should be policy against the AI use, you know, AI-generated videos and all that, you know, in the build-up to be, or do you think those policies can also, you know, infringe on the rights of the people?
I mean, it's almost like saying half and 6, right? Half a dozen and 6. Or trying to say that governance is a race, but not a marathon. It's a 100-meter race and not a marathon, and vice versa. Somebody will tell you, no, I need to get this done almost immediately because of the way I look at it. So for me, they're all together, right? They are part of our governance ecosystem. So we need to look at it in a way that we say to ourselves, what's the best thing to do at a particular time? No? If making those policies and law is going to infringe on people's fundamental human rights, then I don't think I will support that. But now, again, remember that where your right to swing your arm is equally where my own right to defend my nose starts. So they all must come together. So you need to look at it, weigh each and ask yourself those critical questions. Are we balancing it very well, that we protect people's right as well as people's freedom, right? So, I mean, they all go together. So countries are looking at it, are looking at AI, are looking at the policies, and balancing all of them out. Because you need to have a governable society. For you to have a governable society, rules, laws, legislation, all must fall in place in a manner that you have what you want. I mean, that's a better way I could put it. Another way, then maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we already have some AI videos that were playing even while you were speaking, and basically, we're going to be seeing a lot of that used for advertisement and all that. So, democracy is no longer just a battle of ballots. It's now a battle of bandwidths, bots, and blood truths. But democracy can still win if citizens learn to question, verify, and refuse to be programmed. So we must not let the voices of 1993 be drowned out by the algorithms of 2027. On that note, I must thank you, Dr. Nwokolo and Chiamaka, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think what we have put out there is the beginning of a conversation that needs to go really far. Thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
All right, that's it on the beam today. As always, we ask you to stay engaged, stay ready, and stay sharp. Ensure that you interrogate everything that comes across you. And like we say, may Nigeria continue to rise and flourish. We'll be leaving you right now with our top 5 videos. See you next time. Stay tuned.